Welcome to another edition of Two Irish Guys Discussing Software. This is Tomás O'Leary, your host. Today am unfortunately on my own, single Irish guy is what you could call me. But we have a fantastic episode today. Here we are. Sorry we haven't been talking to some of you for a while. We'll be back on track. I'm looking for the other Irish guy. He's been wandering around the office somewhere here. I will get my hands on him, but let me share with you a session we did and I did from our recent Empower event, which we held only a couple of weeks ago. It is our way of presenting options to our customer, our market, about what is possible in the technology space. And we were delighted to have a speaker, Tom Goodwin, who is an author. He is a futurist, but most importantly, he's a pragmatist, a realist, and what I like to call a healthy skeptic. We had a fantastic conversation. We opened the conversation talking about the post-digital age, focusing less on everything new, but more on what actually matters, something that's very close to my heart, and I know to many of our listeners' hearts, and indeed to Tom's. Very interesting, we spoke about what's happening, that we are in the mid-stage of the technology revolution. What does that mean for us as individuals? How do we take power back into our hands as users of technology? There's a shift in that, as we can all see, particularly when you look at things like what's happening in the Senate and Congress in the United States and what's happening in Europe in terms of legislation and pressure that's been put on big technology companies such as IBM and HCL, which we are regular talkers about. So that was very fascinating. And also we're talking about the emergence of new business models. Again, we here in Origin are always trying to push out what we call the concierge mindset, and the fact that there's a huge push to automate things in the technology space. We're trying to bring a personalization back in the technology space, and Tom is a big proponent of that. And we also spoke about digital transformation. So without further ado, I would love to let you listen to what Tom spoke about at our recent empowerment session. So over to Tom. I hope you don't mind me at the beginning. I called you a pragmatic skeptic.
I like it.
And now that you have told everybody that we have everything we need, I can see where you're coming from, actually. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't disagree. I am curious. I'd love to bring the conversation. We're fascinating, and there's so many things in your talk there I want to talk to you about. But while you were talking there, I was thinking through kind of, particularly your comment around the focus on less on what's new and focus more on what matters. Okay. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, if we take ourselves out of our industry and just go to the street, what are the things that actually matter on the street? If you go home to your family and have a big conversation about what matters, they, and I tend to, in my opinion, they tend to be kind of, there's three things really. There's the climate crisis is one, climate change, which we see in front of us every day of the week. I mean, you're in Cannes, you said it was supposed to be lovely weather and it's raining now. I think it can rain in Cannes in June, so don't worry, I wouldn't panic. There's the inequality gaps, the massive inequality gaps that exist in the world today, and between countries, within countries. You've seen the shift that's happening as a result of that, the political shift that's happening, and this kind of whole anti-globalization movement. I wonder, could we talk a little bit about where technology kind of fits into those three themes, if that was okay with you?
Yeah. This is going to start off as quite a high level, sort of impractical reply, and a bit fluffy. But I mean, broadly speaking, technology is a tool. That's the kind of definition of technology as a tool. And broadly speaking, technology has always been amazing for us. Whenever there is a new technology, people get scared. But it allows us to do more. The first tools were levers to our bodies, everything from the plow to the loom. And people freaked out and thought the jobs would be lost, and actually more jobs were created and they were better jobs. And they meant that we didn't wear out our bodies. Then computers kind of became levers to our minds. And now people get scared because they think that means that humanity is sort of disappearing and that every job's going to be lost. But there's no reason when you look at history to see technology in a bad light. Technology always creates more wealth. I think we're at this weird period of time where, because of how we've used some of this technology quite early on in its development, we see it as being a negative thing. You know, we see the internet as being a way for terrorists to spread information. We see airplanes as a way to pollute the planet. Everything from some cyberbullying all the way through to sort of deregulated industries. But what we need to do now really is to sort of turn it around and think, how can we use technology to do good in lots of different places? It's an unfashionable opinion, and it gets me into trouble, but I am incredibly proud and supportive of human ingenuity. And I think that it gives us the energy and some of the tools, perhaps not to solve climate change, but perhaps to mitigate some of the effects of it, for example. And I think we should be more aware that thinking our way through mitigation is probably a sensible way to do these things. When it comes to things like economic inequality, I think the problem is that we don't recognize that as being as big a problem as it is. I think what we really have there is sort of political conversations rather than technological ones.
Do you have a view on what's happening? I mean, when I think about the closing the equality gap, I look at what's happening with both in Europe and in the US, the kind of putting it up to big technology in both the Congress and you know, we're going to have a talk later. You're going to hear a conversation about the whole right to repair movement, but which has a play clearly on the sustainability angle, clearly. But the whole, I think seems to be, and this happens from time to time. You can go back 100 years ago when they took on the big, the mega wealthy industrialists and the owners of the railway lines and everything else that, you know, when they broke up big monopolies. It seems that that's happening again. I think for us as humans, we need to see things like that. It's not healthy to see, you know, when an individual like Elon Musk can decide to buy pay 44 billion, whatever he's going to ultimately pay that, dollars for, what he's describing as it's a, marketplace. But a marketplace where actually nothing really gets bought and sold. It's just a marketplace where people have a conversation. I mean, it's outrageous, you know.
I mean, broadly speaking, technology gives us all of the solutions, but it's only politics and regulation and legislation that sort of creates the environment in which those solutions can flourish. It's very interesting when you look through history, because like you say, you know, Carnegie and sort of oil wealth, you had the sort of the barons that owned railways. So we're not in a particularly unusual situation. I think when you realize the power of technology, I mean, you could now, if you wanted to educate all of sub-Saharan Africa 50 years ago, you know, you'd have to build a network of roads and libraries and staff them and train them. Now you can build a 5G network and hand out tablets that cost about $15. And genuinely, studies have shown that just handing out technology to people all over the world, when you combine that with human curiosity, means that you end up with enormous amounts of learning, but also enormous amounts of entrepreneurialism. It's now possible for anyone with $25 and an hour to set up a Shopify website to sell any product they want in the world. And you now read about, millionaires that decided to do drop shipping. So I'm not so relaxed as just to say, oh, we just give everyone in the world a tablet and everything's going to be fine. But I am saying we have all of the sort of energy and we have all of the right human traits that, as long as we can create an environment where that's shaped in the right way, everything from increasing rates of recycling through to reducing resource use, through to education to reduce corruption. Like, technology cannot be the solution, but it can be a very big part of the solution for most of the sort of goals when it comes to improving the planet.
Yeah, no, I think you're making the point that you made earlier, that we have everything we need. I guess the challenge is, it's not what you describe. What would be lovely if it happened as frequently as it should happen. It doesn't, even though it's so easy in comparison to what it would have been like. It's still not. It's still not happening. And I wonder. I'd like to know, because I loved your description of where we fit as the S curve, and where we fit in that kind of journey, technology journey. And you're saying, which I could tend to agree with, we're at this kind of mid stage in the technology revolution. And I guess like every stage in a revolution, and it happens over long periods of time, it's almost like there's an obligation on people outside the industry to put some parameters around that. We have an industry today that's done amazing things, but it's self-regulated. It's all the rules are designed by the people who are in the industry. And what that ultimately was great at the beginning because it allowed, new ideas to flourish really, really quickly. The difficulty is later on when you concentrate the money and power within a small number of people and organizations, their human nature just will fall into looking to manipulate that. And we have to have people, whether they're not necessarily, don't all have to be regulators or whatever, but something that sets some boundaries and some rules around that. I'm curious to see what you think. I mean, in the industry we're in, we're targeting customers who use technology in a space where actually there's very few, the rules were all set by the publishers, the manufacturers. And the danger is, and one of the reasons you'll hear about free ICT later is to make sure that they don't change all the rules that work today. They could change them in the morning if they got away with it, and they would. Honestly, that's what they would do. They would absolutely change them in the morning, and with this history where that's happened. So, but do you have a view on whether some of those, let's call them rules or kind of general principles, are important now at this point?
Yeah, I mean, everything in innovation is basically a design process. And every design process goes through periods where it's sort of divergent and then convergent. And it really is extraordinary. I mean, I'm not a historian by any stretch of the imagination, but when you read about just a single technology like railways or like electricity, you realize that the same conversations happen. When electricity was discovered and first put into factories, no one really knew what to do with it. They tended to use it the wrong way. There were lots of different standards. People's domestic homes, when electricity was first installed, there was no agreement on whether it should be AC or DC. There was no agreement on the voltage. Different power stations produced different types of power. All of the lighting fixtures were very different. And then when there'd been enough sort of chaos, you almost need the chaos, and you need the sort of unbridled enthusiasm and entrepreneurialism to sort of move something forward. And then when you get to the point where the chaos is greater than the sort of energy, you then have a period of standardization. And it takes a long time. I mean, it's amazing now to think there are now, I think, 13 different types of electric plug socket in the world still. There's still different chargers, USB-C, USB-B. It takes a really long time, and the most important question really is how much in the development of protocols reduces innovation, how much of it cements existing advantages, how much of it reduces the possibility of new entrants. And I don't know enough about the specific area you're in to comment on that. But generally speaking, this seems to be a good time to have more standards. As long as a large number of people are invited to the party, and things like the movement to the right to repair, things like that seem absolutely essential. And
because they themselves, you talked about new business models being created, and you showed a whole load of examples of obviously different types of companies doing different types of companies doing different things, or doing the same, starting as one thing and doing something else. You mentioned also intimate data. What's the place for intimate data? And maybe you might just go through what you mean by intimate data, because we have in our business, when we're a service company, we talk about an intimate service, actually is what we describe it as, because actually we believe that the industry in general has dumbed down support for technology. So it's focused purely at moving the next product out into the marketplace. And it is not, it's for the support side, it said, okay, what's the quickest way to offshore? They've outsourced it. They have dumbed it down. They've put some technology in the way so you can actually get a person. Now, we all experience this even as individuals in our homes when we ring the local insurance company or for renewal of our insurance, or you ring our bank. It's almost impossible to get anybody, you know, and you're really surprised if you get, but that's what's happened. So we actually talk about intimate service and using the knowledge of our customer to get to enhance that service. Is that what you're talking about? That type of thing?
No, basically, I mean, customer service is probably the most important marketing channel there is, and the greatest ability to really differentiate your products and service. But no one ever talks about it. You know, I'm at Cannes here, where we celebrate the fact I think $800 billion a year is spent in advertising. You know, companies just saying, we're amazing, fly with us, we've got great seats, you know, bank with us, we've got good interest rates. We spend $800 billion talking to people. And the moment they decide they're interested, like, oh, look, you know, I didn't realize the car could do that many MPG, you know, let's try and go for a test drive. The moment people show interest in them, we sort of vanish. And I think we've made the mistake of being very intellectually lazy and not listening to people. We've assumed that if we know people's phone numbers when they call us, that's going to freak them out. You know, we assume if we answer the phone, hey, Thomas, you know, is this about your American Airlines flight to Dallas later today? We assume that you're going to be appalled that they know who you are. If it's an airline, you're putting your life in their hands. If your TV knows when your extended warranty is about to disappear, these are not things that freak people out. So I think we should go through a process where we figure out, one, how can we improve customer service? And two, how can we use simple, non-freaky data, you know, like phone numbers, like your service record, like your location, to offer much better service. It sounds a bit like you're doing that, so I'm glad.
Yeah, no, and I think I like your description of the non-freaky part. I mean, it's okay to say to somebody, listen, we know that you have, because you told us about it. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. You know, when we do it in our business, it's like you told us all the technology, all the products that you're using. You told us where you're using them, what you're using them for. So when you ring us, we're able to play that back to you. But what gets freaky is if suddenly we turn up and start knowing all of this stuff and you haven't told us, like or even that you browse on our website and suddenly we've known loads about you that you didn't expect us. It's it's like what people talk about, you know, are the phone, my wife keeps telling me, I wonder, is my phone listening to me? Because I talked about some topic and next thing, it's like I've been advertised. I'm getting adverts on Facebook and I'm getting adverts on, you know, it's great, isn't it? It's all a bit crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like you say, it's exactly about context. It's exactly about sort of permission, not even signed permission, but cultural permission, and a value exchange. You know, if Levi's knows where I am, I don't know how much value I can get from my jeans company knowing where I am. If Uber knows where I am, if Google Flights knows where I am, if my bank can not reject transactions today because it knows I'm in France, these are things that they have permission and they have a value that they can offer with that.
Okay, I'd love to talk about you gave a definition of digital transformation and what it actually means. But actually, when you were talking through it and what, you know, putting, you know, dishwasher tablets, selling them in one way and now selling them online, and all the other ones you talked about, I wonder, are some of these things even necessary? Have we over-engineered the whole concept? Because we're going to hear later on, and actually next up is Harry he's going to talk to Annette and Thierry and Mike about some of the things that they're doing in their businesses and their experiences of it. But in my head, like $1 trillion being spent a year, and I'm going, you know, in our view, it's like it's the old out with the old, in with the new. It's almost always what people think about. And if we have everything, as you said earlier, that if we have everything we need, then are we thinking about things the wrong way? I mean, you know, most companies are always thinking, oh, if it's old, if it's past 3 years, it's old. Okay, now it's that legacy. You talked about those legacy companies. It's legacy technology. It's this term. It's a terrible term to put on it, but suddenly it's legacy, and nobody wants the job to work in there. And we have a business that's focused on legacy technology, legacy IBM and HCL software. That's where we make our business. So we're growing. You know, Gartner talks about our industry growing by 33% per annum. I mean, that's a fast growing industry by any measure, so it's focused on legacy, but there's a conceptually we struggle with this. Should we give it a different name maybe?
That's a very interesting question. Should you even digitally transform? And you asked it in a very different way, because there are definitely some industries that don't need to change. If you're in the business of baking bread or making beer, drones are not changing the beer drinking market. Millennial behaviors may be moving towards hard seltzer, but there's no tech disruption. There's no sort of massive cost advantages. But even more than that, it makes you realize everyone's so in love with new, and new often doesn't really work that well, and new often is sort of overpromised. So the assumption is that if you run HSBC, you should completely rewire your core banking system with brand new, sort of cloud-based technology. And it's never really occurred to me, but you open my mind to the fact that actually maybe you're better off delivering a more robust version of what you have now. Like maybe people don't need faster Wi-Fi, they need Wi-Fi that's more reliable. I now have 5G on my phone. I'm not a miserable person, but 5G has been the worst thing that's happened to my mobile phone for last year. It just means I can't make phone calls in my apartment. And it means that if I'm driving around most cities, I lose my connection to my maps. And it was sold as being this next big sort of leapfrog.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a lot to be gained with incremental. Maybe there's a lot to be gained from maintenance. Maybe there's a lot to be gained from sort of robustness. And, perhaps this is like a whole new sort of conversation. Maybe we don't need transformation. Maybe we need sort of shoring up,
Yeah. Well, if you look at if we're going to consume at the rate we've been consuming, we're actually going to run out of things to make the products with. Like we're what I guess the war in Ukraine has shown us, and the sanctions against Russia, is that the raw materials that we need globally in this globalized market, many of them, huge portions of them, come from those two regions. And suddenly we close it all down. We've got the issues we had that COVID gave us are increasing significantly. So
I'm wary of time, so if you want to shut me up, you can. But I'm wary most trends in life are actually like sine waves, and most trends are reactions to things that went before. And in some ways, something like ultra fast fashion is a sort of rebellion away from the idea of a sort of French wardrobe, which people have luxury clothes that they wear a lot of the time and they last for a long time. And I think consumerism has perhaps been a sort of 50-year trend. And maybe now is the time in which we realize that buying stuff from IKEA that falls apart is not a great way to own furniture. Maybe owning a car that gets a software update to be more fuel efficient is a great way to think about car ownership or sharing one. Maybe it will become fashionable to behave in a way which is about having better things that last for longer.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, because so talk about because in the tech industry, a lot of the protections and rules that exist come from intellectual property rights, for example. Okay, so I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to get into the details about IP rights. But as two lay people talking to each other, we're both aware that intellectual property rights usually last a long time. Yeah, so about 70 years. Okay, so you're talking about a long period of time. Yet the technology that those rights are assigned to, at most, is about 12, maybe 14 years. Okay. And then the IP owner can take it off the market and say, right, what? And there's something in that. This happened, and there's nothing. We need some rule. We need to protect people's innovation, of course. But you wonder what happened. How did we end up giving them so long in an industry where nothing out there was 70 years old? Not even. We're going to talk in a few moments about the mainframe. It's not even. It's the oldest piece of technology, but it's not even 70 years old. So we've got challenges with the rights that we give the companies that make the technology. I think it's creating this challenge that they're not incentivized to actually share this with anybody down the line. There's no incentives there. I just feel some things they're set up wrong. if you were starting, it's like there's an old joke. If you're somebody's driving to Cavan in Ireland, a part of the going, which is the north of the country, and he's asked for the way to Kerry, and they go, well, I wouldn't start here. You'd start somewhere else. So it is like the rules have started out all in the wrong place. Did that happen before? And when we unwind from that?
It's very funny. That's literally the opening line of my book. That story of being lost in an Irish country lane. Essentially, the world wasn't built for now. The reason we have a government is because the assumption was that you couldn't listen to 60 million people in a country. You had to find an elected representative who would represent the local population, because you couldn't hear them, because stage horses couldn't travel that fast. Regulation, taxation, these are all set up on parameters that are now out of date. And yeah, a lot of IP rules is based on the idea that things happen slowly, that technology doesn't move that fast. If you want to make money from the IP of a telegram, you can't possibly make all the money you need to in 5 years, because people can't move that fast. And now you actually realize that companies can explode overnight. So I'm not an expert in IP, but it certainly seems the case that one should go about the world and be somewhat naive and ask these questions. What protection should there be? And that's everything from sort of patents all the way through to protocols, all the way through to licensing agreements. And in a way, the question is, what's the optimum level for innovation? Because if you know that you can't make tons of money by creating a new cancer drug, then obviously the reason to invest in that innovation is reduced. But it's certainly a conversation that should be had.
Yeah. And I think my introduction to you as a healthy skeptic or a pragmatic skeptic, I just think we need more. I count myself one of those too. So I think we need more of those in the marketplace and in the world. So delighted that you're part. We're both part of that. I'd like to just wrap up with a final question, Tom. You've obviously in your life writing about technology. What's the one area of technology that you're, I guess, most excited about as we kind of pass that kind of midpoint of the technology revolution? If we already have everything that we're supposed to have made and we're going to use it, what part of it, or is there some version of it coming out that you're most excited about?
I've got two answers. So the one is to sort of answer the question properly. I think that things like LEDs and batteries will be amazing. I can kind of envision a future where you have a big battery pack, locally generated, and you power all of the things around your home with small batteries that come off it. And things like LED lights are amazing. But really, I feel like it's the combinations of things we've got already. There's an amazing website called Behance where you can go on and see web design from up and coming students. And some of the ways that they see apps working are extraordinary. The process of ordering food online and what the experience could feel like, the process of buying a car and how that could feel, the degree to which a hotel experience may be that you walk in and they just say, hello, Tom, this is your room. I think we need much more optimism, much more imagination, much more ambition, but more than anything else, much more sort of empathy. Like, how can we really work around people to create better products and services? And I really don't think we need blockchain or Web3 or the metaverse or voice or 5G or artificial intelligence or robots. The list goes on. We really do have everything we need. And that's why I call my company All We Have Is Now, because it's about time that people just got on with it and made a difference.
So I loved your comment that we don't need the metaverse, because no matter where I go now online, I'm told that I need the metaverse. I can't. We're going to wrap up in a minute. We've got a minute or two left, but I just want to have you, because it's a great conversation. It's like I don't. You see when I'm talking about us living a life, this virtual life, and I know we all love our technology, we love it to bits, but we still have to experience the reality. This is like this is a great conversation. But if you were here sitting beside me, it would be even better.
Way better. Way better. Let me go to the pub.
So there's no question. And if this conference was live, it'd be better for everybody. We'd have a much more intimate conversation. The thought of us actually going to there's a key technology in sport, as people are going to wear headsets, and they're going to share the headsets. Someone's going to be at the game, sitting there with a headset on, filming it, and everybody else is going to be at home with the headset on. Now, I guess maybe that's a better experience than a television, maybe, for some. But I mean, that's still not going to replace someone wanting to go there live, is it?
No, and I think it's about time we had quite philosophical conversations about this, because I'm aware that both you and I and other people on this call, we may have what I think people called the sort of privilege. The privilege of having a great life. So perhaps if we were born into different circumstances, or if we worked in different ways, like we wouldn't be able to enjoy being in Cannes or enjoy some of the experiences that we get to have. But I don't tend to agree with that. I think we are human beings. We are alive. We are sort of born as tribes. We are born to be next to each other, to sort of feel the energy from each other. And I think that entire conversation is somewhat symbolic of this moment in time. The richest people on the planet are trying to leave it, rather than make it better. The richest people in the world are trying to create online worlds so we can sort of escape stuff that's around us. And I think that's completely the wrong way to go about this. We should be using our ideas, our energy, our time, our money to make everything better. And not to try to replace it with some awful sort of digital form.
Yeah, I like it. That's a nice way to end the conversation, Tom. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Enjoy your stay in Cannes, and we'll be talking again. Thank you. Take care. So there you have it. Our thanks again to Tom Goodwin for that fascinating conversation about digital transformation, about the emergence of new business models, about what's happening in the industry today, about keeping your head on your shoulders, being a skeptic. There's nothing wrong with that, ladies and gentlemen. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We need more humans involved in this. Less technology, perhaps, or perhaps it's what they talk about in France, what they call digital sobriety. There's nothing wrong with technology. It's going to empower us. It's going to move us forward. But actually, maybe we can use a little bit less of it. So, yeah, we at Origina are regularly talking about this. We love to talk to you about how do you extend the life of the assets that you have. It is good for the environment. It's good for your businesses, and you can also get a better service for it. So, next time round, I'm hoping to have Brendan back here with me. Be two Irish guys discussing some software. We'll look forward to hearing from you. Have a great rest of summer, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.